The twin suns of Lysera bathed the floating arena in golden light, making the polished metal surfaces shine like liquid. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds crowded the stands, their shapes and colors impossible to describe. Some had translucent skin that glowed with inner light. Others had multiple limbs or eyes in unusual places. In the center of all this spectacle stood a single human man, the only representative of his species daring to participate in a challenge that had never seen a human step forward before. He felt the weight of every stare as he adjusted the straps of his simple tunic. Around him, whispers of disbelief spread quickly. "A human?" one voice said, barely louder than a murmur. "They are fragile, weak," another replied. The man swallowed hard but did not move back. He had traveled across light years to reach this place, and he had no intention of letting fear hold him now. The council, a group of shimmering winged beings, floated above the arena floor. Their voices harmonized in a way that made the human's chest tighten. "Welcome, representatives of all species," they said. "Today begins the search for a union that can bring harmony to our worlds. Let all who are willing step forward." 100 aliens lined the platform, demonstrating abilities that humans only dreamed of. One levitated silently, controlling a floating puzzle with perfect precision. Another extended its limbs like liquid, twisting and contorting to complete a test of flexibility. Yet the human simply stood, heart racing, feeling every eye upon him. He might not have powers like the others, but he had something they did not: courage, creativity, and a determination to try where no one else dared. The first trial began with a challenge of intelligence. A complex device floated in the air before him, a mix of rotating rings and glowing symbols. The aliens reached out with telekinesis, twisting it effortlessly until it aligned. The human frowned, moving close, his fingers brushing the cool metal. He studied the patterns, turning the problem in his mind from every angle. Slowly, methodically, he adjusted the rings by hand, moving step by step. Sweat dripped from his brow, but then with a quiet click, the device aligned perfectly. A murmur ran through the crowd. He had done it without any special powers, only patience and clever thinking. "Interesting," whispered a judge, one whose form constantly shifted like liquid mercury. "This human does not rely on gifts we take for granted. He relies on ingenuity." The human felt a spark of pride, but he did not let it distract him. He knew the trials ahead would be more difficult. There were tests of agility next, requiring speed, precision, and endurance. The other species moved with graceful power, leaping across floating platforms or spinning through the air with unnatural ease. The human stumbled at first, nearly falling into the zero-gravity pit below. Then he remembered something he had learned on Earth. When you cannot match strength, you use strategy. He built a small lever from the debris of a broken platform and swung across, landing perfectly on the other side. Cheers erupted from a few spectators who had begun to admire his ingenuity. Lunch, if it could be called that, was a strange experience. Food here came in shapes and colors he had never seen. Some of it floated and changed flavor depending on thought. He ate cautiously, choosing something that looked simple, bread-like, but infused with faint sweetness. The other contestants ate in ways he could not understand, absorbing energy with a thought or folding their food into themselves like magic. He realized that survival here meant more than physical strength. It meant learning quickly, observing carefully, and staying calm under pressure. The human walked back to the center of the arena and looked up at the council. They observed silently, their light-filled forms unblinking. Yet somehow he felt a quiet approval emanating from them. He thought of Earth, of the friends and family who had wished him luck without fully understanding the journey he had taken. Their faith had carried him across the stars, and now he carried it within himself. A steady flame that refused to go out even in this alien sea of eyes and whispers. A sudden ripple of energy moved through the arena. The aliens began a demonstration of their powers, a coordinated display of color, sound, and force that made the human's heart pound. They could do things humans could not dream of, shape entire fields of energy, move objects with thought alone, even communicate silently across distances. And yet in that moment he realized something that no one else seemed to understand. While powers could impress, courage and will could achieve the impossible. It was what had brought him here, and it might be what carried him further than anyone expected. As the suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the arena, he stood taller, facing the crowd. Whispers of doubt still circled him, but for the first time he saw something else. curiosity, interest, and perhaps the first hint of respect. He did not know what the coming days would bring, but he knew he had already made an impression. He was no longer just a human. He was a contender, and in a galaxy that had never seen a human dare to step forward. That was enough to start a story worth telling. The next morning, the arena was alive with energy that felt almost electric. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy gathered to watch the trials continue. The human man adjusted his tunic and took a deep breath. Yesterday had been a test of intelligence and ingenuity. Today it would be a test of adaptability, speed, and courage, qualities he hoped could match the extraordinary abilities of his competitors. The first challenge was set on a shifting landscape, a vast platform that twisted and rotated in midair. Gravity shifted without warning, forcing contestants to think and move quickly. The other aliens leaped effortlessly from one surface to another, their bodies contorted in impossible ways, stretching or folding to maintain balance. The human watched for a moment, taking mental notes. He could not move like them, could not bend his body into strange angles or leap enormous distances. But he could observe, plan, and act carefully. He waited for the right moment and then sprinted, adjusting his steps as the platform shifted. When a section began to tilt dangerously, he grabbed a loose bar and swung himself across the gap, landing awkwardly but safely. A few spectators gasped at his audacity. He stumbled again, narrowly catching himself on a floating handhold, and this time he laughed aloud, the sound startling even him. It was a human laugh, a mix of fear and excitement, and it carried across the arena in a way the aliens did not understand but seemed to respect. As he continued, he noticed the competitors watching him. Some looked skeptical, others curious. A tall crystalline alien paused mid-jump to study him, its many eyes blinking in unison. Another, a being of liquid form, flowed around an obstacle, then stopped to hover near him. Despite their powers, they seemed unsure how to approach a contestant who relied on nothing but his mind, hands, and courage. One tile at a time. Step by step, he made it across without falling. By the time he reached the end of the challenge, his chest heaved with exhaustion, and his tunic was damp with sweat. Yet there was a strange exhilaration in his heart. The aliens looked at him differently now. Whispers ran through the crowd, voices full of surprise and admiration. For the first time, it seemed possible that this human could succeed not by power, but by persistence and thought. The next trial moved from physical skill to observation and diplomacy. Contestants were led to a room filled with representatives from several alien cultures, each with its own rules and customs. They were told to solve a disagreement over a rare resource without violence. Many aliens immediately tried to use their powers, telepathy, persuasion, and illusions to manipulate others. The human, however, took a different approach. He listened carefully, asked questions, and tried to understand the perspectives of each party. Slowly, he guided them toward a fair compromise using logic and empathy rather than force. The council observed quietly, noting the human's approach. One member, a tall figure of shifting light, tilted its form as if nodding in approval. He understands the value of thought and heart, it whispered to another. He does not need gifts to lead. His mind and spirit are enough. Lunch was another adventure. The human tried dishes that shimmered and changed flavor with thought, some that floated in the air and others that sang when touched. He ate cautiously, choosing simple foods he could digest while staying alert. Observing the aliens, he realized they relied too much on their powers, sometimes ignoring the small details. He smiled quietly to himself, knowing that humans had a unique advantage: patience, attention, and strong enough to knock him over. But he pressed forward, driven by determination. At last he grasped the crystal, holding it aloft for all to see. A hush fell over the arena. The council floated closer, their forms radiating a quiet approval. The human breathed heavily, his hands trembling with adrenaline, yet he felt an immense pride. He had faced beings more powerful than himself in every sense and had succeeded through courage, observation, and persistence. The crowd, once skeptical, now cheered in awe. As the suns of Lysera set, casting the arena in a warm golden glow, the human stood tall. He was exhausted, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He realized that being human was not a disadvantage here. It was his strength. He could not bend like the aliens, could not fly or control energy, yet he had something unique. The AB, ability to think, adapt, and face fear with determination. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not as a weak human, but as a contender who could challenge expectations and inspire respect. The trials were far from over, but he had taken the first steps toward proving that courage and ingenuity could stand against even the most extraordinary abilities. And somewhere deep in the council's shimmering forms, a quiet thought emerged. This human might not just survive the trials, he might change the galaxy. The next morning, the human awoke to the hum of the arena. The trials were about to enter a new phase, one that tested more than strength or cleverness. It tested teamwork, strategy, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. He could feel the tension in the air. The other contestants were already gathered, their eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and competitiveness. Many still underestimated him, assuming a human could not keep up. The council announced the challenge. Each participant would lead a team of mixed species members to navigate a labyrinth floating in space. The labyrinth was filled with puzzles, traps, and shifting paths. Only by working together could a team reach the central chamber and retrieve the prize, a crystal imbued with the wisdom of Lysera. The human glanced around at the other contestants. Some of the aliens had obvious advantages: telepathy to communicate silently, shape-shifting to slip through narrow paths, or extraordinary speed. But as he observed the teams forming, he noticed that the more powerful contestants often ignored their teammates, assuming they could succeed alone. The human, however, approached his group with humility. "We need to work together," he said simply, his voice steady. "I don't have powers, but I can think and plan. If we listen to each other, we can make it." A small winged alien hesitated before nodding, followed by a tall, fur-covered creature with 4 eyes. They accepted his leadership, partly because no one else seemed willing to coordinate. Together, they entered the labyrinth. The first few sections were deceptively simple. Platforms shifted, and doors opened only when the team solved a puzzle. The other teams rushed ahead, using powers to bypass obstacles. The human reminded his group to slow down, observing patterns rather than reacting impulsively. His patience paid off. When one platform rotated unexpectedly, his team held on, while several competitors tumbled into a harmless but humiliating pit below. The human smiled quietly. Strategy and observation often outweighed raw power. Deeper into the labyrinth, the puzzles became more complex. One required the team to rearrange massive floating blocks to form a path. The winged alien wanted to use telekinesis to move the blocks alone, but the human suggested a coordinated effort. "If we push together, we save energy and avoid mistakes," he said. Reluctantly, the alien agreed. Step by step, the team moved the blocks into place, forming the path. Another contestant attempted the same puzzle solo, failing repeatedly and losing precious time. Then came the test of courage. A chasm filled with glowing, swirling energy blocked the path. Several aliens hesitated, wary of the danger. The human studied the chasm, noting that the energy had a pattern, pulsing in a steady rhythm. "We can cross if we move with the pulses," he said. The team synchronized their steps, timing each jump perfectly. One misstep would have sent them tumbling, but by trusting each other and following the human's observation, they made it safely to the other side. Along the way, the human learned from his teammates as well. The winged alien taught him how to adjust balance in low gravity, and the fur-covered creature shared tricks for detecting hidden traps. For the first time in the trials, he felt a deep sense of camaraderie. Strength alone was not enough here. Cooperation and mutual respect were what led to success. When the team finally reached the central chamber, the prize crystal hovered above a pedestal. A glowing barrier surrounded it, shifting constantly. Many aliens tried to force their powers against the barrier, failing. The human stepped forward, studying the movement. He realized the barrier responded to patterns rather than force. With careful timing, he guided his team to move in sync with the barrier's rhythm. Slowly, deliberately, they approached, and the barrier dissipated just long enough for the human to grab the crystal. A cheer rose from the council and spectators alike. The human's team had succeeded, not because of magic or special powers, but because they listened, coordinated, and acted with intelligence and courage. Several competitors looked astonished, unable to believe a human could lead them to victory. The council floated closer, their shimmering forms casting light across the chamber. "This human demonstrates what many forget," one said softly. Power is not the only path to success. Observation, patience, and cooperation are just as important, perhaps more so. The human handed the crystal to the council and took a moment to catch his breath. He looked around at his teammates, feeling gratitude and pride. They had trusted him and he had trusted them. Together they had accomplished what no single contestant could have done alone. As the day ended, the arena quieted. The suns of Lizera were low in the sky, painting the floating platforms with gold and pink hues. The human walked slowly back to the observation deck, reflecting on the lessons of the day. Strength and power were impressive, but courage, intelligence, and teamwork could achieve results that even the strongest could not. For the first time, he felt a quiet confidence growing within him. The trials were far from over and greater challenges awaited, but he now understood that being human was not a weakness, it was a strength. The ability to think, to adapt, and to inspire cooperation could rival any alien power. And somewhere in the crowd, beings who had doubted him watched with new respect. A single human had stepped forward, and already he was changing the way the galaxy thought about his species. The following day, the trials took a new turn. The human man was led to a section of the arena that resembled a miniature city, with buildings shaped like crystals, towers that floated in midair, and streets that twisted in impossible patterns. Here the challenge was no longer about speed, strength, or even agility. It was about understanding cultures, communicating across species, and solving conflicts peacefully. The council had made it clear, intelligence alone would not be enough. The human stepped carefully into the city, noting the unfamiliar architecture and the alien residents bustling around him. Each species moved differently, spoke in strange sounds, and reacted to gestures in ways he could not predict. Some greeted him with curiosity, others with suspicion. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of the lesson he had learned yesterday. Observation, patience, and empathy could overcome fear. The first task appeared almost immediately. Two groups of aliens argued over access to a marketplace. The conflict was tense, their gestures sharp, their voices raised in alien sounds that made the humans' ears ache. Several competitors tried to intervene using powers, telepathy, illusions, or displays of strength. But the human noticed that these attempts only made the dispute worse. He stepped forward cautiously and raised a hand in a universal gesture of calm. He spoke slowly, clearly, in the common language provided for the trials. "Please, let's talk," he said. "I want to understand why each side is upset. Can you tell me what you need?" At first the aliens hesitated, surprised by his calm and respectful approach. Then slowly they began to explain, each sharing grievances that had been ignored. The human listened carefully, repeating back what he understood to show that he truly heard them. By acknowledging their concerns and suggesting compromises, he guided the conversation toward a peaceful resolution. The council watched closely, their forms glowing softly in approval. Other competitors looked on, some skeptical, some surprised. The human realized that power alone could not solve every problem. In situations that required trust and understanding, careful listening and reasoning were more effective than force. Next, he was invited to a ceremonial gathering in a grand plaza. Representatives from 4 different species awaited him, each expecting him to navigate their customs correctly. One demanded precise bowing, another expected gifts to be offered in a particular order, while a third spoke only in rhythmic gestures. The human observed carefully, recalling small details from each culture. He approached each representative with respect, making mistakes at first but correcting them quickly and with humility. Slowly the tension eased and the aliens began to nod, recognizing his effort. As the day continued, the human faced several unexpected challenges. A sudden dispute broke out between 2 traders over the ownership of a floating gem. A competitor tried to intimidate the aliens with displays of energy, but the human stepped in. He suggested a simple test of fairness, letting the gem be weighed and divided according to agreed-upon rules. The aliens accepted, and the conflict ended without hostility. The human's calm reasoning had a powerful effect. The other contestants began to take notice, some with admiration, others with frustration. In one particularly difficult moment, a group of alien children became frightened by a collapsing bridge. Several competitors ignored the situation, thinking it was not part of the challenge. The human did not hesitate. He carefully guided the children to safety, using his hands and simple tools to stabilize the structure tempo. Rarely, the council noted this act of bravery and compassion, understanding that true leadership often meant putting others first, even in dangerous or confusing circumstances. By evening, the human had navigated the city, resolved disputes, and gained the trust of several alien communities. He had learned to adapt quickly, observing cultural cues, listening carefully, and acting with patience. The other contestants were no longer sure how to measure his abilities.
He did not have flashy powers or incredible speed,
But he had something that made a difference where others had failed: empathy, intelligence, and the courage to act wisely. As the twin sons of Lysera sat behind the floating towers, the human stood on a balcony overlooking the city. He felt a quiet satisfaction. Each day of the trials tested him in new ways, and each time he found that being human, thoughtful, adaptable, and willing to act with heart, was not a weakness. It was a strength. In the council chamber above, whispers flowed among the judges. "He is extraordinary," one said, "not for his power, but for his mind and spirit." Another nodded. "Perhaps we have underestimated humans. Perhaps they have gifts we cannot see with our eyes." The human looked out across the city below, the glowing streets alive with alien activity. He had faced challenges that required him to learn, to observe, and to act with care. He had earned trust where force could not. And in that moment he understood that the trials ahead, no matter how difficult, were opportunities to show the galaxy what humanity could offer: courage, empathy, and the ability to unite even the most diverse beings. He turned back toward the council and the next challenge, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time, he felt that he was not just a participant in the trials. He was a human standing in a galaxy full of incredible beings, and he had already begun to leave his mark. The following morning, the human awoke to a sense of unease. He could feel it in the air. Some of the other contestants were beginning to view him as a real threat. Until now they had underestimated him, assuming a human could never match their powers. But his cleverness, courage, and ability to work with others had begun to change opinions. Whispers of frustration and surprise spread through the arena, and he knew that rivalries were about to grow sharper. The council's announcement set the day's challenge, a series of tests designed not only to challenge physical abilities, but also to test cunning, observation, and strategy. Each contestant would navigate a complex obstacle field that changed constantly. Some of the competitors smiled confidently, their powers giving them an apparent advantage. The human, however, had learned a simple truth: speed and strength alone could be misleading. Careful thinking and creativity could level the field. The moment the challenge began, it became clear that some competitors had chosen a darker path. One of the alien contestants, a long-limbed creature with crystalline claws, had secretly tampered with part of the course, hoping to block the human's progress. The human noticed the trap just in time, his eyes sharp for subtle differences in the environment. With quick thinking, he avoided the trap and even adjusted a loose panel to create a safer path for himself and others. Some of the spectators gasped. Others murmured their admiration. The council watched silently, noting the human's ability to stay calm and adapt under pressure. He did not curse or panic. He assessed, adjusted, and continued. This, they recognized, was the essence of a true leader. Further along, the obstacles became even more complex. Platforms rotated, energy fields pulsed unpredictably, and gaps widened suddenly. Many competitors relied on their powers to force their way forward, often misjudging the timing. The human, by contrast, studied each challenge carefully. He used levers, pulleys, and simple tools to move obstacles where strength alone would not have sufficed. Step by step he progressed, careful but deliberate. At one point he encountered the long-limbed alien again. It tried to block his way directly, assuming the human would retreat. But he did not. He observed the alien's movements and noticed a pattern in how it lunged and retreated. Using a small floating platform, he bypassed the threat entirely, leaving the alien flustered and unable to continue efficiently. Around him, spectators whispered in surprise. The human had no powers, yet he had outsmarted a competitor who relied on strength and intimidation. Midway through the field, a sudden storm of energy erupted, sending platforms spinning and gusts of wind that could knock even the most agile competitor off balance. The human held onto a narrow ledge, thinking fast. He grabbed a loose cable and secured it across the gap, creating a makeshift bridge. One by one he crossed safely, His fellow competitors, those who had relied on raw power, struggled, and some fell behind entirely. During this trial, the human also showed empathy and teamwork. When he noticed a smaller alien being struggling with the spinning platforms, he slowed down to offer guidance, showing how to time movements and find balance. The alien followed his advice, completing the section successfully. Some competitors sneered at the idea of helping others, but the human had learned that strength combined with compassion often created the greatest advantage. As he neared the final obstacle, a massive wall with shifting panels, the long-limbed alien tried one last act of sabotage. Panels rotated to block him, but the human quickly observed the rhythm. Using a combination of timing and small improvised tools, he climbed and maneuvered through the wall with precision. At the top, he paused and looked back. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering the human's ingenuity and courage. The council descended to observe. This human demonstrates not only intelligence but the ability to overcome adversity with skill and courage, one member said. Even when faced with deliberate obstruction, he adapts and succeeds. His spirit is unbreakable. The human, breathing heavily but smiling, realized something profound. He had faced more than physical challenges. He had faced cunning, sabotage, and doubt. Yet he had prevailed because he never gave up, never panicked, and never relied solely on what others considered power. His perseverance and mind had carried him through, earning the respect of allies and even some of his rivals. As the suns of Lysera began to set, painting the arena in hues of gold and pink, the human looked out across the floating platforms. The trials were far from over, and even greater challenges awaited. But he understood now that being human, a species often underestimated, was an advantage. His creativity, courage, and willingness to help others had turned him from an unlikely contestant into a contender who could inspire respect across the galaxy. For the first time, he felt a quiet confidence and determination. He was no longer simply surviving. He was proving that humans could stand among the most powerful beings in the universe, not through extraordinary gifts, but through perseverance, clever thinking, and a steadfast heart. And somewhere in the stands, beings who had doubted him whispered to each other, recognizing that this human was not only surviving the trials, he was changing the way everyone thought about his species. The day of the final trial arrived with a quiet tension that filled the arena. The human man stood at the edge of a platform that seemed to float endlessly above a shimmering energy field. Beyond him lay the final challenge, a test of judgment, courage, and leadership. The council's voice echoed clearly, resonating through the arena. This trial is not about strength, speed, or intelligence alone. It is a test of heart. Choose wisely, act with clarity, and prove that you can lead. Around him, the other contestants prepared in their usual confident ways. Many relied on their powers, ready to force their way to victory. The human, however, felt a different kind of pressure. He knew this trial was the one that could determine everything. Not only his success, but the way the galaxy would see humanity. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of all he had learned so far. Patience, observation, empathy, and courage. These were his true strengths. The challenge began. Contestants were presented with 3 paths, each representing a different way to complete the trial. One required raw power to manipulate energy fields, another required clever use of alien technology, and the last required careful diplomacy and understanding of other species' needs. The human studied each option carefully. He could not rely on strength or extraordinary power. He would have to trust his judgment, his mind, and his heart. He chose the path of diplomacy and understanding. Immediately, he faced beings from multiple species, each presenting problems, fears, or demands. Some were skeptical of his authority, assuming a human could not lead or mediate. Others tried to intimidate him, testing his patience. The human listened to each concern with quiet attention, asking questions and clarifying misunderstandings. Slowly, he began to build trust. A difficult moment arrived when 2 factions argued over a rare resource that could power entire cities. Many contestants attempted to impose their will, using powers to force a solution. The human refused to act rashly. Instead, he asked questions, listened, and proposed compromises. If we share this resource based on need, all can benefit, he suggested. We can make rules that are fair and respected by everyone. At first, the factions hesitated. Then, seeing his calmness and sincerity, they agreed to follow his plan. Next, a challenge tested courage. A volatile energy sp refloated above a narrow platform. Touch it at the wrong time and the trial would end in failure. Other contestants tried to force their way past, relying on speed or powers. The human observed the pattern, noting the moments when the sphere pulsed calmly. Step by step he approached, carefully timing his movements. He reached the sphere and touched it with steady hands, calming its energy. A quiet cheer rose from the council and spectators. Once again, the human had succeeded not by force, but by patience, observation, and careful action. Then came the ultimate decision. The council asked him whether he would accept the honor of uniting the worlds through marriage, a symbolic act that would bring peace and cooperation across multiple species. The human paused. He thought of Earth, of the people who had believed in him, and of all the lessons he had learned during the trials. He realized that his courage, empathy, and judgment were not just for himself. They were for everyone who would be affected by this union. He stepped forward confidently. "I accept," he said, his voice steady. "Not because I seek power or fame, but because I believe that understanding, cooperation, and courage can create a better future for all of us." The council's light flared, brighter than ever, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Aliens from every corner of the arena looked at him with admiration, respect, and newfound hope. The human felt a quiet satisfaction. He had faced trials that tested intelligence, agility, diplomacy, and courage. He had faced rivals, sabotage, and impossible challenges. Yet through every obstacle he had remained true to himself, relying on qualities that no alien power could replicate. His ingenuity, empathy, and perseverance had carried him to victory. As the suns of Lysera set, casting a golden glow across the floating arena, the council conferred briefly among themselves. Then they spoke. "This human has proven that courage, wisdom, and heart can surpass even the greatest powers. He has shown that leadership is not given by strength alone, but earned through action and understanding. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era." The human looked around, noticing faces of beings who had once doubted him now glowing with respect. Some competitors approached and offered nods of acknowledgement. Others simply watched in awe. He realized that his journey had not only proven his worth, but had also changed the way the galaxy viewed humanity. Walking toward the council, he felt the weight of the moment. He was no longer just a participant. He was a symbol. A single human, once underestimated, had stood firm in a galaxy of extraordinary beings. He had shown that courage, intelligence, and empathy could rival any power. And in doing so, he had opened the door for future generations of humans to stand proudly among the stars. As the arena quieted and the twin suns dipped below the horizon, he felt a sense of peace and purpose. He had made choices guided by heart and mind, and he had earned his place. The trials were complete, the challenge met, and the human had proven, beyond any doubt, that even the smallest or seemingly weakest beings could achieve greatness through courage and wisdom. And somewhere in the council chamber, a voice whispered, "This is what it means to be human." The day of the union arrived with a quiet majesty that filled the entire floating arena. The twin suns of Lysera bathed the city in golden light, reflecting off crystal towers and shimmering streets. Spectators from dozens of worlds gathered to witness the moment, their colors, shapes, and movements blending into a living tapestry of life. The human man walked steadily to the ceremonial platform, his heart calm but full of anticipation. He had faced trials that tested his mind, courage, and heart, and now the final step of his journey awaited. Around him, beings of incredible beauty and strength prepared for the ceremony. Some glowed with inner light, others floated effortlessly, and a few shifted forms constantly, like living art. Despite their awe-inspiring appearances, the human felt no fear. He had learned through every trial that courage, empathy, and cleverness were as valuable as any extraordinary power. He had earned his place here, and he would meet this moment with dignity and respect. The council, their shimmering forms radiant, welcomed him with words that echoed across the floating city. "Today we honor the courage, wisdom, and heart of this human. By stepping forward when no one else would, he has shown that even the smallest and most underestimated can achieve greatness. He now joins in union to unite worlds and inspire harmony across the galaxy." The human took a deep breath and stepped closer to the figure he would unite with, a being of elegance and intelligence, whose calm and grace had guided many participants through the trials. Unlike the other contestants who relied on powers or strength, this partner had relied on wisdom and understanding, qualities that complemented the human perfectly. Together, they represented the best of their worlds: courage and empathy, thought and diplomacy, humanity and experience. As the ceremony began, the council outlined the meaning of the union. It was not merely a symbolic act. It represented cooperation, respect, and the joining of knowledge and culture. Across the audience, whispers of admiration and hope spread. Many beings who had doubted the human now looked at him with newfound respect. He smiled quietly to himself, recalling the trials he had endured, the obstacles, the challenges, and even the moments of sabotage that had tested him. Each had prepared him for this moment, teaching him the value of patience, strategy, and heart. The human extended his hand, and his partner took it. The council spoke words that were understood by every species, translating the meaning across languages and minds. The human felt a warmth spread through him, not from magic or technology, but from the simple act of connection and trust. For the first time in this arena, he understood fully what it meant to be part of something larger than himself. As the ceremony concluded, the crowd erupted in applause, cheers, and vibrant displays of color. Aliens who had once looked down on him now celebrated his courage and wisdom. The human realized that this union was more than a personal victory. It was proof that even those who seemed ordinary could inspire extraordinary change. His journey had shown that intelligence, empathy, and persistence could overcome doubt, fear, and even the most impressive powers. The day passed with celebration. Music unlike anything the human had ever heard filled the air, sounds and rhythms that shifted with thought and feeling. Beings danced, floated, and sang, sharing their culture openly and joyfully. The human joined in, laughing and moving with a sense of freedom he had never felt before. Around him, friendships formed and alliances were strengthened. He had not only survived the trials, he had united others, proving that cooperation and understanding could achieve what force never could. As night fell over Lysera, the floating towers glowed softly under the stars. The human stood on a balcony with his partner, looking out across the city below. He thought of Earth, of the people who had believed in him even when the galaxy seemed impossible to reach. He thought of the trials, the challenges, and the moments when he had doubted himself. And now, standing here, he felt a quiet pride. He realized that being human meant more than biology or strength. It meant courage in the face of doubt, intelligence in moments of confusion, and empathy in times of conflict. These were gifts that no alien power could replicate, qualities that had carried him through every challenge and earned him respect across worlds. He had proven that humans could be leaders, peacemakers, and innovators, even in a galaxy that often underestimated them. The Council's light filled the sky one last time, signaling the beginning of a new era. Across the galaxy, beings who had watched the trials would tell stories of the human who dared to step forward, the one who united worlds not through force or fear but through heart, courage, and understanding. And as the human stood hand in hand with his partner, watching the floating city glow in the night, he felt a sense of peace and purpose. His journey had begun as a challenge, a test of skill and bravery. It had become a story of inspiration, a reminder that even the smallest voice could be heard and that courage, intelligence, and empathy could change the course of worlds. In that moment, surrounded by allies, friends, and beings from countless species, he knew one simple truth: a single human could make a difference and in doing so inspire a galaxy.